that's the future, right? Being customer centric, starting the product journey, or the idea around even building a business from the customer. What does the customer want? That is the future. And I
Yeah.
think that's where we can pioneer a lot of things in the African continent, right? Because a lot of the solutions that have been here are they're not fit, right? And that's why there will always be friction when it comes to, okay, why is my insurance claim not being paid? We are not communicating, right? They don't understand why you are so strict about certain things, because our own reality doesn't relate to that,
Yeah.
right? It means that there's a lot more communication and openness and talking about things, right, to find a solution.
That's Damola Oloko, and this is the future of insurance. This episode is brought to you by Medallia, the market leader in customer and employee experience. Their award-winning SaaS platform, Medallia Experience Cloud, makes all your other applications customer and employee aware. Medallia uses proprietary AI and machine learning to reveal predictive insights that drive powerful business actions and outcomes. Leading insurers like the Hartford and Farmers use Medallia to reduce churn, turn detractors into promoters, create in-the-moment cross-sell and upsell opportunities, and drive revenue-impacting business decisions. Learn more at medallia.com. Hey, Damola, thank you for joining me on the show.
All right, thanks.
I'm excited to hear your perspective. I think for a lot of people in the industry, they're not aware of what's going on in the African market and even what that term means, if it's one market or lots of markets. And so, I've enjoyed following the content you're putting out and the people you brought together to try to learn more about what's going on and the changes. But I'd love to hear just sort of high level, give us an overview of the market in Africa, the insurance market, and maybe some of the variations by country or region, and some of the themes that, where has there been stronger performance and where are people maybe not as likely to take up products, or some products that haven't had success that we might see in other parts of the world.
Yeah, thank you. There are common themes, right, around the continent, but like you mentioned, the continent is huge, and there are different countries, different cultures. Even just in Nigeria, there are hundreds of languages, cultures, right? There are a lot of variations when it comes to how the customers react and buy insurance, right, and behave, and their reception to insurance, and stemming from culture, religion, and prior experience, and things like that. And so generally, you definitely see all of these things playing out in different countries. So, for example, just to give you a sense of the African market. So in terms of insurance, right, the level of penetration is in and around like 3%, right, and that's quite low, right?
3-0.
And you can look at that. Yeah,
30.
30%, 3.0%.
Oh, 3%. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you can look at that as opportunity, right? It means that a lot of people don't have insurance, right? So there are a lot of reasons behind this, right? So one of the things that when you now go through deeper, right, you see some, for example, the South African market. South Africa is an outlier, and the level of improvement of their industry, is quite advanced, even looking at the world generally. And you compare that to countries like Kenya, where I mean, in that part of Africa, you are seeing a lot of innovation when it comes to micro insurance and leveraging mobile technology in order to scale insurance to provide better products, for the customer. So that's a market where you are seeing a lot more support for innovation from the regulator, which is not something that we see a lot in other African countries. If you look at Nigeria, for example, now Nigeria has a large population, but then there's still that issue relating to the level of penetration. Level of penetration is in around like 1%, less than 1%, right? So again, I look at it as opportunity, right? Because what we have seen is prior to now, there's been a lot of focus on the commercial lines and oil and gas, and P&C, and things like that. But let's focus on the retail market, which is a space that actually needs solutions. And so we are beginning to see around the globe, around the continent right now, that insurtechs are starting to come into this space, creating innovative products and new ways that customers can buy insurance, and new products that are simple, and easy for people to buy. Partnering with telcos, for example, in order to sell insurance, all you need to do is send a text, you sign up, and you can make a claim just via a text and things like that. So that is the reality, right? There's a low level of penetration, and because of the difference in the countries, that we are seeing different cultures play in the way people buy insurance. But then we are seeing innovation playing a role as well in how retail market is being brought into the space as well, in terms of them buying insurance.
Yeah, I want to make sure I understand this. Were you saying Kenya has more of the innovation and regulatory support for micro insurance and innovation there? Were you saying that's going on in South Africa, where the market's more developed?
Yeah. So, for South Africa, like I mentioned, right, their market is quite developed, right, and you see a lot of things that they do. Even when you even look at the world, right, the market is quite advanced, right. So definitely there are a lot of innovation and things being done in that space, right. But when it comes to Kenya, why I mentioned Kenya is, there's this central theme around the continent about creating simple products, micro insurance products, that the last mile customer can buy, right? So in that angle, right, you see the Kenyan market really pioneering. You are seeing a lot of insurtechs, for example, coming to the space, to do a lot of things in that angle, creating products that are simple. For example, you have Pula, who is an insurtech company, providing agri insurance to small scale farmers, right? You have Lami Insurance Technologies, who are providing API technologies in order to help insurance companies, to scale their products, to distribute to more, platforms, to partner with platforms. So, for example, you can use their API technologies to, plug into e-commerce platforms, so that they can sell insurance, like embedding insurance, into everyday things. Because I know, like I said before, there are a lot of reasons why the level of penetration is low, and one of the reasons is the experience people have had before, right? So it's not been so great, and it's something that I've noticed that it's similar around the world, right? Nobody actually wakes up and say, "Hey, I'm going to buy insurance."
Yeah.
Yeah, but that experience has caused a lot of people not to consider insurance, right? But then embedding insurance, is an initiative that is beginning to catch on.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about opportunity, and then you look at the difference between just those two countries, South Africa and Kenya, where it's South Africa, you could argue, still has a long way to go for penetration, but it's so much more than in other countries. And then you see what's going on with Kenya, where I imagine it's somewhere around 3%, maybe less. And you have all this kind of new thinking about what could it be,
Yeah.
instead of just pushing it. So I mean, it speaks to your point on opportunity, that where there's that much open field, people are creating, and they're thinking about what might actually be bought, rather than what products from elsewhere in the world do we just import and hope people buy, even though actually it's not what they need or how they want to purchase.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, and it's quite interesting because I mean we've had a lot of engagements with some of these guys doing stuff in that market, and one thing for me is to ask them like how is it done there and how can we, I mean, definitely we're not going to go the route of just copying and pasting, right? For example, in Nigeria, even if it's the same continent, right? How is it done there? What are the approaches that you're taking? And so, how can we now adapt that to our own reality? Because we are totally different people, right? So, culture affects a lot of things. Religion as well affects a lot of things. So how do we translate all of that? Because at the end of the day, all of these retail customers, this emerging markets, right? They have a way of protecting themselves and managing their own risks, right? So how can we take what they are using, which they have trusted for centuries, right, and provide this insurance? Say, hey, we can help to provide a better cover for you, or how we can see how you can see what they are currently doing, see what insurance brings, and marry them and see how they can work to help them, stay healthier. For example, we see situations where a lot of people are so cash trapped in terms of their health, right? So, for example, there's a thing that has been said that the average Nigerian, for example, is one major health crisis away from poverty,
Yeah.
right? So, how can we help use insurance to reduce that risk so that you are not living with that burden, and things like that?
I I think this is really fascinating for me because for people in Western markets, they may not think of Africa. I mean, I had this same conversation about Southeast Asia. We might look at a region and say, whether it's Cambodia in Southeast Asia or any of the markets you're talking about in Africa, and not see that as a place where the way the industry will move and where the future products and the way we transact will come from. We wouldn't assume that
Mm,
because it's always come from Europe or North America or what have you. But actually, I think because of the need to look at things differently and the
mm,
challenge of not being able to just sell what you've always sold, I think the different markets in Africa, for example, are designing what the future will look like so that it's not just the big policies that no one wants to buy and frankly may not be able to afford,
mm,
and it actually speaks to
yeah.
needs. So that health crisis stat you gave, that's a very real thing in almost every country. It's always relative to what income and wealth looks like in the country, but for many people, even in the US or in parts of Europe, one major health crisis can be, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars or euros or whatever your currency is, that most people don't
Mm,
have the ability to weather that. So it's,
mm,
maybe it's more apparent in the example you're using in Nigeria, but I think for a lot of people, maybe that resonates. So what if we could solve for
yeah.
that?
Yeah, because I mean, for example, so we had a conference last year,
Yeah.
InsurTech Business Series conference, right? And I mean, during one of the conversations, someone said insurance really was not designed for the low income earners, right? And in a way, I look at it and say, hey, okay, I mean, look at the products in the market, look at the terms and conditions and things like that. In a way, it kind of excludes some people and makes them like automatically uninsured, right? Or make them uninsurable. All right.
Yeah.
So how do we rethink all of those things and see how we can say, hey, we cannot take what is being done in UK, in the US, and say, hey, this is how fire insurance is being done, and just bring it here. What our reality? Uh, for example, when they're designing their products, they put into consideration what the government provides. They put in consideration the climate, put in consideration, the attitude of the people and things like that. But how can we now say, okay, this is a product that can work? So this is our own reality. What is our own reality? What is the government providing? What are the amenities that can help to reduce risk and things like that? And this is to design I tell you, for example, now, in terms of insurable interest, right? So for life insurance, you definitely you have insurable interest. I mean, for a number of the products that we have for life insurance here in Nigeria, for example, you have insurable interest in your parents, you have in your uh, in-laws, But then, how about your brothers, right? How about your siblings, right? Uh, why that is important for me and why I brought that up is because there's a lot more sense of community here in Nigeria, in Africa, really.
Yeah.
So you definitely see a situation where your siblings, come and live with you, for years and years. Eventually they get married, then they move out of your house. So if anything happens to that person, you are definitely going to be concerned. So definitely you have an insurable interest in that person. So, but when you look at the conventional insurance products, it's not provided. That kind of relationship is not provided,
No.
right? And so those are some of the things that we need to rework and say, oh, what is our reality and how can we innovate around it? Not necessarily changing those pillars that makes insurance, but then adapting it enough to say, hey, this is what can work in our own space.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, it goes back to what I find really with anyone who's pushing the envelope anywhere in the world is that customer centric viewpoint first, rather than, well, what do we already have? And, oh, they're not buying it, so okay, we just won't sell it to them. It's saying, well, not why aren't they buying it, but put all of that aside and just ask what they actually need. What is their life situation? Where are they exposed? Where are they at risk?
Yeah.
And then what can we craft that actually works within the other constraints they have? Monetary, maybe I know you talked in the past, like on the Coverager podcast, about that discomfort in talking about death when you're selling life insurance, that the notion of like, it's taboo, right? It's not accepted. It's not comfortable. So having a product that is so focused on someone's death, and that's such a big part of the conversation, well, maybe that's not going to be appropriate in certain settings. So are you asking the right questions about what someone needs and what they're able to engage in?
Yeah, I think that's the future, right? Being customer centric, starting the product journey, or the idea around even building a business from the customer. What does the customer want? That is the future, and I think that's where we can pioneer a lot of things in the African continent, right? Because a lot of the solutions that have been here are they're not fit. They're not fit, right? And that's why there will always be friction when it comes to, okay, why is my insurance claim not being paid? You guys are frauds. But because we're not communicating, right? They don't understand why you are so strict about certain things, because our own reality doesn't relate to that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I said, there's that sense of community. So it means that there's a lot more communication and openness and talking about things, right, to find a solution, right? That is kind of how the community is. The leaders come together and say, hey, this is the situation. They talk about it and then provide solutions and things like that. They don't wait for the government to come and do things, right? So, but when you are now saying, okay, I'm an insurance company, right, and I say you must adhere to X, Y, Z, instead of having a conversation and say, okay, what can work for you? Yes, this is what we can provide, but what can work for you so that we can meet somewhere that makes everybody happy? So I think that's the way forward. And I mean, I'm a strong proponent for innovation, and it's just something that we need to push a lot more. There's a lot that more that we can do. Insurers need to do a lot more. I mean, I won't blame them for being so slow, right? But then, the regulator, that's where the regulator also now comes into play. And that's why, I mentioned earlier, I have engagement with people from all of these other markets in Africa that are doing a lot more things and saying what has been done. For example, in Kenya, you see that the regulator recently put up an accelerator program, right? So they're encouraging InsurTech, hey, come in and provide solutions. Let's see how it can work. Yes, we want to ensure that things are done right, but let's bring ways that you want to innovate. Let's see how we can make it work, and see how we can grow the industry. Because Nigeria, for example, 1%, less than 1% of of penetration. That's a lot of people who are not insured, and that's
Yeah.
opportunity if we have the right fit.
Yeah. And if you don't, what are you aspiring to? Maybe the 3% average, or at best where South Africa's in? And how long does it take you to get
Mm,
to 16% or 17%, whatever it is? Or are
mm,
you looking at something more like 70, 80, 90% if you actually figure out what people want? Um,
mm,
I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. And I think if you fast forward 20 years, um, will there still be lots of mainline big PNC products sold throughout the world? Yes. But I think you're going to see a lot of the kinds of things that are coming out of this state of necessity that you're talking about in Africa, that we're seeing in Southeast Asia, that meet more of what day-to-day needs are, and day-to-day, ability
mm.
to engage in the product is. I think it's really interesting. And maybe that starts to change people's sense of insurance, because now it's just a part of every day, and it works the way everything else in
Mm-hmm.
your life works, because it's embedded. It's a part of, that normal
Yeah,
transaction you
yeah,
had otherwise.
yeah. Because I mean, if you look at, America, UK, and all of these other parts, even South Africa, insurance is almost like it's part of the way of life. It's part of the culture, right? It's almost nothing so strange to talk about. But when you look at the African um, Nigerian market, for example, people, when you mention insurance, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, what's this again, right?
Yeah.
Not because maybe they've not heard the word insurance, but they don't actually understand what it offers,
Yeah.
right? I can take care of my family. If anything happens, I would ask my family to contribute, and we can, you know, bury my mother. In looking at creating innovative products, again, this is an example for, when someone passes, right? Maybe my parent passes. Uh, in some cultures, right, it is the responsibility of the community to bury that person, right? And so, how do we factor all of these things into the products that we design? Because at the end of the day, if you say I bought an insurance product because of my parents, when they pass on, I could, bury them. If you take that funds and say, hey, I want to do this, the family is going to kick back at you and say, hey, that's not your duty. It's the community's duty, because that's the culture, that's the way of life. So how
Yeah.
are we putting all of those, consciousness into our products? Not to change it from being a funeral insurance product, but it's a funeral insurance product, but with the pulse of the people, and saying, hey, this is how ours is, not just, okay, this is how it's done in Lloyd's. Just let's
Yeah.
adapt it because Lloyd's is the benchmark.
Yeah. It's like, the existing product is tone deaf to what the market actually does in the
Mm,
activity that it's supposed to be ensuring. And again, back to your point, it's listen to the actual customers. What is it they do and need, rather than just try, like, you're asking them to change cultural norms that have been established for hundreds of years or longer,
yeah,
so that
yeah.
you can sell them something, right? It's not a good mix.
Yeah,
Are there,
it's not. Yeah.
I'm curious, given that you get to see across a number of countries in the work that you do with your podcast, which we should mention, the InsurTech Business Series, which is really, really fascinating. And you go beyond Africa, you bring people in from around the world, but there's obviously a strong focus on the African market. Are you seeing, themes of maybe not the exact same product or company, but you mentioned like APIs and micro insurance? Are there technologies or themes that are being lifted from one place, and, the tools are there with a different context in a new culture, in a new country, in a new language, new religion, like whatever the different contextual shifts are, but sort of the bones can apply? Are you seeing some that have been successful in broadening out in that way, or some companies in particular?
Yeah, so some of the things that we've seen actually in recent years is the success of leveraging partnerships, right? Especially partnerships with telcos, right? And really the idea around just taking advantage of mobile technology, right? A lot more people use their mobile phones, right? They're always either on WhatsApp or on TikTok or so why not meet them where they want to be met, right? So mobile penetration on the African continent is quite huge. And so how can we create products around mobile technology and not just creating products that could fit maybe the high-end, the sophisticated phones, but even the basic phones, how can we adapt solutions so that people can easily buy and make claims, and experience insurance via their mobile phones. And so those are some of the things that we have definitely seen, in the market. And you see, for example, the micro insurance company headed by Richard Lefley, and what they've been doing for really about 20 plus years now on the African continent, leveraging partnerships with telcos, in different countries, how to sell different types of insurance. People can buy insurance, for as low as $1, $3, and there's no paperwork, right? All you need to do is maybe send a text, and then you are paid your claim. You can sign up. All of the hassle, of paper is off because it's seamless and it's easy, and that's what people are looking for, and that's the way that we can attract a lot more people. So I think that is one central thing that has worked, and we'll definitely see a lot more scale in that area. And I mean, due to the COVID-19, a lot more insurance companies are looking to see how we can, digitize, and not just digitize, but actually be more nimble and fast and easy in how they do things. So we are seeing a lot of insurance companies thinking outside of the box and things like that. So for example, here in Nigeria, we have AXA Mansard, who actually have created a department called the emerging markets team, right? And so what they do is they actually create products for the emerging market. So this is outside of what is already available in the market. So if there are different things the different things that you want to bring to market, you have conversations with them, and they can create products, simple sachet products, really. For example, they have a partnership with a company called Wella Health, and what they are doing is they are using a subscription model in order to provide malaria insurance for Nigerians, right? So less than $1, you can actually get malaria care. And so all you need to do is, if you are subscribed to their platform, all you need to do is get in contact with them, maybe through WhatsApp or a call or a text, and then they can refer you to the nearest pharmacy and you get care. There's no hassle or anything. So you just go there, get care, and go your way. And so that, I mean, why that is important is because malaria is such an endemic here in Nigeria. A lot more people die of malaria than we think. And so it's something that is very much needed in the market. So that's in terms of all of this innovation. I mean, one of the things that, I mean, definitely, like I said, I mean, innovation is something I'm quite passionate about, and we have conversations, about it. But I mean, I don't know, maybe you can share your thoughts about this. And I mean, looking at your engagements again with the market, is, I mean, how far can we go when it comes to simplification? I mean, a lot of things that we are going to be seeing is, I mean, all of these products are already in the market. How can we simplify them, break them down, and make them minute so that the emerging markets can take advantage of it? So, but how simple is how far can we go when you say simplification? Because you have to be careful about ambiguity when it comes to the law and things like that.
Yeah, I think that there's I mean, this is what I was getting at with kind of like the bones of it. There are things, the structure, the technology, and the idea behind what you're trying to achieve that can then be broadened out. So the use case, what someone needs coverage for in a given market in a different context, like malaria cover, obviously very pressing. There's value in that in some parts of the world, Nigeria and other places. And in other parts of the world, it could be something else. So the malaria cover product shouldn't just be lifted up and then dropped in Canada or wherever like that. It's not going to sell, but maybe there's something else that's really valuable that can be constructed in a similar way. I just the U.S. is going through a freeze right now in the South, and they're not used to that. So there's a lot of pipes bursting, people's homes are flooding, they don't have electricity, things people were not prepared for. So maybe there's a similar cover that's actually completely different, right? It's the mechanism for it works the same. So it connects you to, instead of a clinic to go to get treatment, it's a plumber, or it's a something, to get to your home, and just for a very specific use case where the cost is much lower because the frequency is rarer, but the severity is much, much higher. And we have homeowners insurance, and so that should step in here, but maybe there's other situations where there's something extreme that wouldn't normally be covered, people aren't thinking about, but you can create coverage through the technology and the mechanisms and partnerships that you did elsewhere for some other cause or some other need, and replicate that way. So that's what I think is interesting, is are we seeing new ways of solving problems that we can then broaden out to totally different use cases for each context?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you look at it again. I mean, these are some of the things that just come to mind, when looking at all of this, innovation. Because you can be very positive about it, but you have to be careful about your flanks as well. How practical do all of this innovation, go? How well can they work? I mean, another thing that came to mind as well, asking myself is, what constitutes what constitutes quality insurance product, right? Is it selling insurance via ecosystems? Is it donating part of your premium to a noble cause? Is it being able to pay insurance per mile? Is it creating products for a specific gender? Those are some of the things that come to mind. Exactly what, like you were mentioning. The bones, the bare bones, the core has to be the same. So, but when you're looking at it, because we're saying simplification and breaking it down. So, what exactly now constitutes a quality product? I mean, there was a conversation on Clubhouse recently, and it was quite interesting. All of the conversations around simplification, and we had Ed, who is leading the Lloyd's lab
Yeah.
and he talked a lot about what they are focusing on, about simplification of insurance and things like that. And so yes, we can simplify insurance, but I mean, definitely you have to be conscious about the fact that yes, insurance is actually, you can enforce it by law. So how do we ensure that those ambiguities don't come into play? Because at the end of the day, that's a long tail liability that insurance companies want to run away from. And I guess that's why incumbents are not so quick to innovate.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Damola, as we wrap up, is there anything that you think we should have in mind? I mean, we've talked about quite a bit of this, but anything in particular, words of wisdom you would share to give people a bit of inspiration about how we might actually change things?
Yeah, I'm a positive person, right? And like I said earlier, I mean, innovation is something that we can use to change a lot of things. And I think that it's important that even with the pandemic, a lot of us need to be more open-minded with a lot of things that have happened. Even in America, a lot of people, we need to be more open-minded. Think outside the box and see how we can partner a lot more. Looking at the insurance space, there are a lot that can still happen even on the African continent, right? And so, I mean, maybe this is a call for people who are out there who want to, get into that space. Why not, reach out and see? I mean, there are a lot of people creating content about the insurance space, and we are one of them. And so, how can you learn about the space? I mean, the first step is learning before you can say, okay, I want to invest in that space. So I think that is most important, being open-minded and say, hey, how can we do things better? Because COVID-19 really showed us that what the status quo cannot remain the same. And I mean, it's just amazing. And I mean, there are central things around the world that we need to take cognizance of in terms of the gender issue in the insurance space, right? A lot more women need to be promoted, considered when you're looking at a lot of things, even creation of products. How do we ensure that their needs are put in, and also look at how we can get more millennials, Gen Z, involved in the space, because the age issue again, a lot more older people in the market.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Damola. Really, really great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Something people maybe don't think about on a daily basis is, where is the change going to come from? And obviously a lot of us experienced it in 2020, where suddenly we were forced to change. But there's another side to it where, there's creation of new ways of thinking about the idea of protecting people. And it's happening. Yeah. It's happening. It sounds like, in really exciting ways in Africa. So I appreciate you sharing much of what's going on in the African continent. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Great speaking.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to Damola for coming on my show after having me on his. If you haven't checked out the InsurTech Business Series, you absolutely should. There are links to the show in the show notes, so you can get to it there. Really easy to take in. Great interviews from people really around the world, not just in Africa. Obviously, I was on the show and I'm not in Africa, but discussing the changes, the kinds of things that we talked about in this episode today, and thinking about maybe a context that you've never thought about. And it doesn't mean you're looking to expand into Africa or Southeast Asia or whatever else that we talked about that maybe isn't in your geographic footprint or plans. But I would imagine it gets you thinking differently about things. So really great to have Damola on and sharing some thoughts there, maybe a context and a subject matter that you had not thought about yet, which is how we grow and we think of new ideas when we get sparked by something totally different from what we live in day to day. So thank you, Damola, for joining and for sharing your thoughts and your perspective. Thank you to Medallia for supporting the show. And as a reminder, you can, of course, you should, of course, subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening on and send the show to a friend. You can just send them over to Future of Insurance, future-of-insurance.com. The dashes matter. And there's a link to the podcast right there. And of course, there's also a link to the books if you want to pick up Volume 1 about legacy carriers, Volume 2 about startup carriers, and engage in the conversation of change in our industry some more. So again, thanks to Damola, thank you to Medallia, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. We'll have more for you in the next episode. So if you're subscribed, you get that automatically. Take care, everyone.